Hello, everyone. My name is Michael LiCastri. I am a comedian, filmmaker, actor, writer, director, producer, kind of do it all. I'm the founder of 1202 Productions. We work in the film and theatrical spaces. Like I said, I also do stand-up comedy as well. So I have been in the entertainment industry for 25 years now. Oh my God. that's a weird thing to think about. Oh yeah, next year will be 25. Oh my God, 24. Yeah.
Yeah.
Next year will be 25 years that I've been in show business in some fashion or another.
Well, taking time off, what does that do for you? Does that actually clear your head, clear the cobwebs?
Absolutely, absolutely, because my day job is working as a marketing copywriter, and that's not something that you want to be doing 5 days a week, 8 hours. Like
Yeah, yeah,
you'll burn out.
yeah, yeah,
You'll absolutely burn out.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, 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 yeah. So what is it about making films, man, that kind of drew you into that?
oh my God. So I've been in show business since I was 8, and I am in my early 30s now. So I've been doing this for like a real long time. Um, I've always wanted to make a film. Like I went to film school. I did theater all through high school and college. When I did my undergrad at UCF, I went to film school. So I've been making films for a really long time. Plans is my first feature, but I had made 10 shorts before that, some of which have played at festivals all over the country.
Yeah, yeah,
So like for me, really it was a matter of like, and I hate to be so crude and kind of boil it down to the like most simplistic elements, but it was like a shit or get off the pot moment.
no,
It's like
absolutely.
you've made 10 shorts. And at one point I had left Florida and I had moved to New York for a little bit. And I was staying with my aunt and uncle up there. And we had a family friend come over who was a line producer up there. And basically, just after talking to him, the realization very quickly set in that I needed to make a feature. Like
Yeah.
I could not go any farther doing shorts, right?
Mhm.
And so I very quickly figured out, we were talking and I had asked him, I was like, man, we invited him over for dinner. We had all this pasta. It was a great meal. And I had asked him, I was like, man, how much money would it take to get an independent film made? Because I knew I was going to have to pay for it myself, right?
Mhm.
Nobody ever gives you money to make the first one
That's
ever.
right. That's right.
And so I was like, how much would it cost me to do this? And he was like, if I called in every favor, and I was like, every favor. And he said, and mind you, you've seen the film. It's small. It's
That's right.
lots of people talking. It's a
That's
very
right.
Kevin Smith kind of thing. And he told me that movie would have cost $100,000 to make in New York. And I literally slammed my hand out on the table and said, fuck that, I'm going back to Florida. And ended because I knew in my bones, I was like, I can make that movie for 10K. And
That's
I
right.
did.
Hmm.
And I came back here. It cost us 10K to produce it and another 2,500 to do all the editing, the post-production.
Okay.
So when you combine production and finishing funds, that's an entire like 75-minute feature film that we made for $12,500.
That's right.
And honestly, one of the things that I've been really appreciative of when people have watched the film is that nobody's really been able to guess how much we made it for. It does not look like it cost what it cost. Not saying it looks like Avatar, because it doesn't. It's not what
Right.
I'm saying.
Hmm.
But what I am saying is that I have seen movies, I think, that mine looks similar to that cost 10 times as much.
Absolutely.
So I think that and this is just a really long way of saying that my crew did a great job.
Oh,
It's
listen,
really what it is.
absolutely. And my favorite character is actually the drug dealer, the guy in the alleyway.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so here's a funny story about that.
Hmm.
I had originally wanted Jason Mewes from Jay and Silent Bob to do that part.
Hmm. Okay.
If it had been up to me, I would have had that. And for 6 weeks, I emailed this people. I followed up. I was super consistent. I did everything as a producer was supposed to do.
Hmm.
And after all that phone calls, I got to know the assistant on like a first name basis. It got kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah.
And then finally, she sends me back a one-word email, his handler saying essentially that his appearance fee was more than our entire production budget. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And then we tried to reach out to another, not somebody who's so much known for movies, but a big name in the stand-up world. And that guy read the script twice and really liked it. And I'm not going to name him because he was super nice about it.
Yeah.
And basically passed because he didn't want to play a drug dealer. He thought it would be bad for his image. And I had to try really hard to be professional and not reply back anything snarky there.
Yeah.
But again, he was super cool, so I'm not going to name him because he was very chill about the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, and then what ended up happening is that because the two people in that scene are Edwin Neal from Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Linnea Quigley from Return of the Living Dead and a bunch of other B horror movies, I thought they were both funny, but not people necessarily known for doing comedy, right?
Okay.
And so the way that came about is a really good friend of mine from high school, kind of like a big sister to me. She no longer lives in Florida, but she did makeup on a lot of films when she was here. And during that time, she became friends with a casting director down south named Marty Marrero. Marty Marrero is one of my favorite people on the planet.
Okay.
Like, just a wonderful human being, but also like a great CD. And so she had told me, she was like, reach out to Marty, send him the script. If he likes it, he will help you and he'll understand that you don't have a lot to work with.
Okay.
So I had sent him the script. He read it. He was like, this is really funny.
It is.
He's like, I want to be a part of this. He was like, he's like, the script's funny. Let me see what I can do. So we went through a number of people because he's done casting for so many horror movies. So we had tried to reach out to a number of people. The gentleman from the Phantasm, I think his name is Angus something, and the name is leaving me right now.
Right.
Unfortunately, I believe he's since passed away. But we had wanted to work with him at one point, and then his illness got really bad, so we couldn't. And then finally, Ed kind of came on board. He was like, maybe we should reach out to Ed. But the thing was, Marty wanted to put Linnea Quigley in the movie because they're really good friends. And he was like, Linnea's looking to branch out.
Yeah.
And he was like, I think if we get Linnea, we can get Ed involved. So it's a 2-for-1, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, I hadn't considered that, but that's a really smart idea, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
So originally, the drug dealer as written was kind of just like a guy in his mid-40s. So it was basically Jay from Jay and Silent Bob. That's how it was written. And I realized when we were dealing with two older actors, I was like, the potential opens up here now. Because I can do tons of funny things that I really couldn't necessarily do, right? Because these people are much older. So why are they selling drugs? There's got to be a specific reason, right? They're way older.
That's right.
They're pushing the shelf life there. So something must have happened.
Right.
And I thought that I gave them like a really fun, funny reason for them to be out on that corner out there. I'm really glad that you said that, just because that was one of those scenes that I literally had to rewrite due to the casting situation.
Okay.
Because that was not and that was really the only thing that changed from the original draft to the movie we made.
Yeah.
But pretty much the movie you saw was the movie I wrote.
Okay.
And that script was written when I graduated college in 2011, 2012, and the movie didn't get made. We wrapped in 2017, started in 2016, finished in 2017.
Yeah.
And it's funny to me because the script is about, these 20 somethings and they're, trying to find work. And what's wild to me is that now that screenplay is almost 10 years old. And if anything, I don't really think the situation's improved all that much.
It's great. Yeah, it's apropos, most definitely. It's very topical. Absolutely, 100%.
And it's funny because I have a couple of jokes that are kind of political, but especially my stand-up and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't really tell political jokes. It's not really my thing. Not because I don't have strong political opinions. If Bill Maher wants me on his damn show, I'll be happy to go on and tell him whatever I think.
Right.
Ask me all the questions you want. But I don't do it as part of my act. I don't tend to make a lot of films about it or write plays or sketches about it because I think it ages really poorly. Yeah. Right? It kind of turns your comedy into milk. Right? Political jokes have a very, very short shelf life. That's why they tend to be on, The Daily Show or their late night shows that air every 5 days a week.
Yeah.
So for me, I tend to want to make things that, maybe 10 years later, 15 years later, people will still be like, oh, okay, these jokes still hold. They're a little more universal.
Yeah.
But I was writing what I was living at the time. And I'm glad that especially when people my age or younger have watched the film, they seem to have really connected to that aspect of it. You know, there seems to be an emotional through line where they're like, no, I get this. I get
absolutely. Yeah. But as a matter of fact, it kind of reminded me, and this is not a knock at all, but it reminded me of an episode of South Park. Like I thought it was.
I love those guys, so not at all.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Those guys are heroes of mine. I love those guys so much. Matt and Trey, legends.
Yeah.
Legends in the game.
Yeah, heroes. Absolutely. Because they're thinking, the characters are thinking like, how are they going to get money? Because the character you play now needs to get money. And so they decide, okay, well, we're going to become pimps, or you're going to become a pimp. Yeah. They go through that process. It's not the best. Work. Right. Yeah. It's a reminder me an episode of South Park, most definitely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, no, thank you, because I love that show. So I really appreciate that.
Okay.
No, I mean, for me, it was telling a really simple story and then just kind of making it as absurd as possible while still being believable and staying within the confines of that budget. Like I said, Matt and Trey are big heroes of mine. I love those dudes. But for me, kind of the starting point of how I got into comedy was Kevin Smith. So, you know, if anybody and several people have, they're like, oh, this feels like an old Kevin Smith movie. I'm like, thank you. That's what I was going for.
Okay.
You know, it's very much cut from The Clerks and, you know, those low budget kind of dialogue movies. I know you're not supposed to say his name in a positive way because your head will explode. But Woody Allen, you know, kind of the grandfather of, don't get me wrong, not a good person.
That's right.
Not a good person at all. But he very much kind of laid the groundwork for the idea that a movie could be largely people talking.
That's right.
Woody Allen really did kind of invent that as we know it. And without Woody Allen, you don't get John Hughes. You get no Ferris Bueller, no Breakfast Club. And without John Hughes, you don't get Kevin Smith. Without Kevin Smith, there is no Judd Apatow or Seth Rogen, especially as we know them. So like, there's a through line of these guys you can follow. And I just kind of consider myself the next person in that evolution. You know, I want to make small dialogue-driven comedies that make people laugh. I love Marvel movies as much as the next guy. But, you know, ultimately, I'm not cut out, I think, to make them. You know, I like making people laugh. That's what I'm good at. That's what I know how to do. And so... And I think that's something that especially like really young artists struggle with is like they want to do 15 different kinds of like things. And it's like, pick a lane and stay in it. Figure out what you're good at first. I just acted. I acted for almost 10 years before I ever wrote a script, before I ever directed anything. So, you know, I think you really got to pick one thing, kind of hone on that, and then branch. And I'm not saying don't branch out into different genres or anything like that. But what I'm saying is like, get that bag together, get that skill set together, that tool set, so that you can expand, so that people will trust you with expanding.
That's right.
So, because that's definitely, you know, talking with like my mentors and people that are way further along in the industry, you know, is something they've told me. They're like, don't try to be 15 different things because managers and agents aren't going to know how to sell you.
That's right.
You know, they need to know what they can take you out as.
Yeah. Well, I respect that. Yeah. I respect that 100%, man, that you know your lane and then you're getting confidence in your lane. I respect that. Yeah. My question would be, though, are you satisfied? Well, I guess it's two questions, really. Like, are you satisfied with the way that it turned out? And then the second question would be like, did it turn out the way you thought it would turn out?
The film? Absolutely.
Yeah.
To both. Yeah. No, we very much made the movie I made. Like I said, virtually every word that I wrote and scene that I had in the original script made it into the final film.
Okay.
So there was very little, you know, and I know that's not always a common thing, but like I produced it, so I was going to make the movie I wanted to make.
Yeah.
The other thing too is that I tend to write scripts that hover around 80 to 90 pages and are very dialogue driven.
Okay.
And I do that on purpose so that there isn't really a lot to cut. Right? Like basically, I give you enough to where that's it. I'm not, because the stand-up in me knows, absolutely knows, especially with a comedy, that once you go over 90 minutes, you're really going to start to lose people's attention. You are, whether you realize it or not.
Yeah.
So like, I'm smart enough to know, like, don't push over that. 75, 80 minutes, that's good. Yeah. If Borat can be 80 minutes, then, you know, I don't know more than Sacha Baron Cohen. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, like,
yeah, that's right.
You know, so don't, you know, I love 40-Year-Old Virgin. It's an absolutely hysterical movie, but it's a 2.5 hour comedy.
Yeah.
Good luck getting that made now.
That's
in
right.
2021. No studio is going to sign off on it. It just won't happen. Maybe if you're Judd Apatow, yeah, but otherwise, no way.
Yeah. How did you get your two co-leads? Are they friends of yours, or did you audition them?
So the guy who played John, the big guy, is a friend of mine. His name is Keith Surplus. Very dear friend of mine. We've worked together for years. He's been in a number of my short films. I love acting with Keith because we are friends and we often play friends.
Okay.
So it works because we're not having to fake it. Alan was played by a guy named David Plowden. We were not friends. We didn't know each other before the film. But he came in and he did a really solid audition, and did the audition in a way that it needed to be done. We had that part was extremely difficult to cast because we had a lot of people try out for it and basically played the character just not how I had written him.
Well, was it written for a black guy intentionally?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
It was, but they played him as very street. They played him as extremely street in the auditions. And the sides that I gave people when I specifically told them, I was like, don't play him that way. It's based on a friend of mine. It's based on a friend of mine named Will, a guy I went to high school with, and who has that side to him, but he's not like that all the time because he's a person, a fully rounded human being.
Right.
So, people kind of played him as this one-dimensional kind of street dude. And I'm like, that's not this character.
Yeah.
This character's college educated. He likes to cook. That's, and that was a big thing for me, was like, not only was it going to be based on a friend of mine, but I was like, I refuse to write this like stereotypical one-dimensional black dude. That's not who he is. I'm not going to contribute to. Look, man, there's way too many movies and shows that have that already. I don't need to be contributing to it. But yes, it was always written for a black guy. It was based on a black guy, always.
Yeah. Well, I guess some of the other actors that were in it, were they also satisfied after they saw the final product?
Yeah, I mean the ones that have seen it, I'd like to think most of them have seen it by now, but we didn't get to do like a big formal screening because renting a theater costs like money. But I know I spoke with several of them afterwards, and I mean, ultimately, like, I think from the scenes that they did, they understood the kind of movie we were making.
Yeah.
And then when you see the whole thing together, I think it's cohesive. It's very cohesive and it fits. I don't think it's one of those things where like you read the scenes, you showed up, we shot, and then you were like, I thought this was a drama about like cancer or something. No, it's very apparent as to what it is from the sides and from when we were shooting. So I would say that I know for a fact that the people that saw it, they were happy with the way that it turned out. Yeah.
Well, I know you're working on your next one. Did that one now give you confidence to move forward? Not that you needed confidence, but did it kind of clear up some issues you had about shooting a feature?
Yeah, I mean, well, here's the thing. I just wrapped a project and it was a short. I would love to make another feature. And if by chance a producer happens to see this and they're like, this guy seems all right, let's talk. Because the only thing that's stopping me from making another feature, truthfully, is funding.
Okay.
So that's the big holdup right there.
Yeah.
I just got done making a short. So that I'm super happy with the way it turned out. We're in kind of post-production on that and doing the editing. But ultimately, as I've been working with mentors and other industry people, what they've liked the feature, they think it's good. What they really want me to focus on now is doing something viral. That's really, they want me to grow that social following. And I'm, again, I'm not going to tell those people because they know more than me that they're wrong. So like, these people, if I told you who they were, you'd be like, oh my God, like, I can't believe they've been willing to sit with me at all. I'm very fortunate about that. I just asked in a way that was calm and professional, didn't scare them off. And, what had initially been planned to be a 30-minute Facebook chat had turned into an hour and 40-minute video call.
Oh, good for you.
Studio executive.
Good for you.
When that dude talks, I listen. So, but he really wants me to focus on growing the social part of it. So, but I mean, obviously every time you do it, you get a little bit stronger, you get a little bit better. But I trust in my process at this point. Like, I have a process and I know when I'm going to make a film, like the steps that I have to go through. Because I've done this now so many times that like even if I have to change it a little bit or tweak things here and there, the overall process, the overall workflow doesn't change.
Okay.
And the reason for that simply is, and it's not because like I'm trying to be stubborn, but it allows me to ensure, because I'm the producer on all of my stuff as well, that I can ensure the safety of my cast and crew and that everything is organized and doesn't fall through.
Yeah.
So, you know, and it took a long time to figure out, okay, these are the steps that this need to happen in. But yeah, I mean, you only get better with time, right? The more you do it, the more you get better. But, you know, I've seen a rough cut of the short. I'm very excited to see what happens when we get music over it.
Okay.
Basically what it is, and I'll explain it very simply, is it is a fake trailer for a movie about the Bible, but it's as directed by Quentin Tarantino. So, so either you like, I love that sounds hilarious, or it's not for you.
Yeah. You and I are cut from the same cloth, brother, because I heard some of your stand-up as well. And you did the joke with there was one joke combined with the Wesley Snipes. So yeah, I know where you're going. Yeah. Yeah.
Wesley, man, that was so funny because I had taped that. So that particular, because the first couple tracks are all from one show, and I had taped that show. That was the first stand-up show I ever did back in 2007, right after I finished high school.
Okay.
And Wes was in the news a lot for that whole tax evasion thing. And like I said, I don't do a ton of topical stuff, but the funny thing is that joke still plays.
That's right.
Because it was such a big news story, and also because Wesley is never out of the news for too long.
That's
like,
right.
Even if he's not making a lot of movies, you know, the dude has a lot of opinions, and he's not shy to share them because he's Blade. Like,
That's right. But don't you think that gives you the authority to do that though? Like, yeah, I'm Blade. I can say what I want.
Okay, I'll tell you this. There are a lot of dudes who pretend to be hard in the movies and are not actually hard in real life.
Yeah.
No, Wesley Snipes will kick the shit out of you.
That's right.
Wesley Snipes is 100% about that life.
That's
that
right.
Dude has like 3 or 4 black belts. Don't pull up on Wesley Snipes. That dude will for real mess you up.
That's right. Absolutely.
Steven Seagal, not, you know, he's not about it, but Wesley Snipes,
There you go. There you go. Where do you get your inspiration from for your films, your short films?
For me, a lot of it is just like, I once heard, I guess the best way to describe it, Chris Rock once said that a lot of comedy it's almost like a science experiment, right? It's a hypothesis. You ask a question and then you say, what if this would happen? And then you kind of stretch that situation to an extreme that's fun without being completely unrealistic. And so for me, a lot of it is like, again, the Tarantino thing was just, what if Tarantino made a Bible movie? What would that trailer look like?
That's right.
You know, for me, the best laid plans was, you know, what would happen if I had to turn to a life of crime? Like, what do I think that situation would look like? How would it play out? How would my friends be involved? So a lot of it is what if? Is me just asking myself, what if X happened? And kind of seeing where that situation plays out. So often I think that is the place where the best comedy comes from. It comes from a source of questioning. In a lot of ways, I think if you ask comics and they're honest, we will tell you that there is a lot in common between comedy and journalism. It is a lot of people watching. It is a lot of observation. But then we get to have fun because reporters can't tell stories, right? They have to stay with it. They can't make stuff up. We get to make stuff up. Yeah. So you kind of start from a similar place, you know, of observation. And then you kind of go, well, okay, I've observed this behavior. What would happen if this came in, right? Kind of mess the whole thing up. And I think that's where it comes from. Okay. But a lot of those things, one of my favorite things about plans is that so much of it really happened in some form or fashion. That whole thing with the dick-shaped ruse, which is like just one of my favorite jokes that I've ever done. Yeah. That really happened to me, man.
Okay.
No, I was at a friend's apartment and another friend, we were all hanging out and he like said something goofy. So like jokingly, I kind of like chased after him and he knew if I called him, I was going to like smack him a little bit.
Yeah.
He bolted in the other direction and it was wet out. The cement was wet and the treads on the bottom of my shoes were awful. And I fell and I got back up and I had a dick-shaped bruise on my knee for like a week.
Yeah, but that was the funny part.
I'm right about this.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So yeah, that's the other thing too, is just like stuff that happens to me or people I know. That's the other place too that the inspiration comes from.
Well, absolutely, absolutely. Um, do you, if you got the funding, what do you think would be your next project if you got the funding?
Oh, okay. So my next project is that I want to make the next feature is a movie called Friends in Low Places. Um, Basically, it is about a guy who he's a photographer. He's really stressed out because he's having like a creative block, and he's just at his house. He's working on some stuff, and his friend, who he hasn't seen, is like former best friend, I guess, shows up to his house, and he hasn't seen him in several years because he's been incarcerated.
Yeah.
And basically the guy shows up and says, "Hey man, I need a place to hang out. I stole a bunch of money from the mob. They are coming to kill me and I need a place to hide."
Yeah.
And so basically it takes place almost entirely in one house over one night. It's meant to be, again, an extremely small film. I kind of wrote it with a friend of mine who no longer really acts. So if I get to make it, Keith will probably play that role. I wrote the kind of fast talking friend that just got out of jail for myself because I like playing those kinds of guys.
Okay. All right.
I love as an actor playing characters where it's like, oh, this guy's a dick, but he's funny and I don't hate him completely. Like he's not really a dick. Yeah, he's abrasive, but he means well. Randall Graves, again, from Clerks, is kind of the archetype where it's like, that Randall has a heart, but he's so dumb with people because they're so dumb sometimes. He has no tolerance for people's bullshit. And that's just basically me in real life. So I love playing those kinds of characters. Anytime that I get to play me, but without any inhibitions, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So, and basically, the rest of the movie is them kind of trying to rekindle their friendship and kind of figure out what happened while also dealing with this hitman that shows up. And then like the mob boss who comes after them personally, like the big guy shows up. And again, it would be a super small feature to make. I like making small things because if they don't make their money back, nobody goes broke. So, you have to think small for like your first 3 or 4 movies. Yeah. If you've got 5 features under your belt, then maybe talk about doing a $500,000 movie, which is still small, but still, but yeah, I'm not, if somebody came to me and said like, here's $100 million, I'd be like, no, give me $500,000. Like,
let's be reasonable.
It's people talking.
Yeah.
I always come back to, at one point I hosted a radio show for National Public Radio. I used to work for WUCF. My old roommate and I in film school, we were the film review guys. And we got to meet a lot of celebrities that came through town as a result of that, because it was in Orlando. So we did a lot of film promotion. Our friends loved us because we hooked everybody up with the free movie tickets. They loved it. But the reason I tell that story is we got to meet Jason Reitman, who is the son of Ivan Reitman, the legendary director of Ghostbusters, a whole host of other comedy classics. And Jason himself was an established director, Juno, Up in the Air, just tons of stuff, but both highly established directors. And it was so funny because people for years have been asking Jason Reitman, like, are you ever going to make a third Ghostbusters? Are you ever going to make a third Ghostbusters? And he was like, no, man, have you seen my other stuff? He's like, it would be 2 hours of people talking about busting ghosts instead of actually doing it. And then he changed his mind. Yeah. And now he's making the third Ghostbusters, and it's it's happening. So, but again, he's made 5 or 6 movies at this point. And I think when he said that, he'd only made 2 or 3. So I think as I make more, I think I'd be, maybe comfortable moving on to larger things. But in my heart, I started in the theater. So ultimately what I'm interested in is characters and dialogue and making people laugh. Funny is supposed to be cheap.
That's right.
It's not supposed to cost a ton of money.
That's right.
I love action movies. I love mysteries and dramas. I love all kinds of stuff. But I have found that I tend to work best in a smaller sandbox and, let my characters quite literally do the talking for me.
Just if you could you explain to me, just from a technical side, because I've never done this before.
Sure.
Just really quickly, like how does one make a pitch to a studio? Because I'm sure you've made a pitch before. And so how do you do that?
So basically, I will say this. I've had the opportunity to pitch like individual people, like producers. I've never had the chance to pitch to a studio.
Okay.
And And truthfully, I mean, I have some insight about the process because I've talked to people who have.
Yes.
And basically, that situation is super rare, and it doesn't really happen that often, that much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
In order for that to happen, you have to be an established writer, right? You have to have done several things to even have that opportunity. But ultimately, that is something that gets set up between yourself, you as the writer, your manager, and a producer at the studio. So oftentimes, this is something people get confused about. You don't pitch to the whole studio. Right? That's not really a thing that happens. What happens is there are producers that oversee certain aspects of things at the studio, and you are pitching to one of those individuals. So basically, there's a guy that does comedy, right? There's a guy that does action stuff. So like what you're trying to do is pitch to a producer that works at the studio that specializes in your genre. Because there are producers that have overall deals with studios. Clint Eastwood, for example, right? If you notice, all of his movies are put out by Warner Brothers.
That's right.
That's not an accident. He has a production shingle there. The Super Trooper guys, Broken Lizard, they have a production shingle there. Chris Nolan also has one at Warner Brothers.
Okay.
So basically, what it is you are trying to, as a producer, get a deal with the studio, right? And if you're a writer, you are trying to pitch to a producer who has a deal with that studio. And sometimes, if you're lucky and you're somebody's cousin or something, maybe you can get 5 minutes of their time and pitch to them. But most of the time, you need to be repped first. You need to have a manager. And a lot of times what people don't understand about getting paid to write is that you 99% of the time are not making money from your original ideas. What you're making a living off of is a producer or a studio has an idea, and then they put out what's called an OWA, or an open writing assignment. And you're trying to get that open writing assignment. That's what you're trying to get. It's not about selling your own stuff. Your original stuff is great. That's very helpful. And what that does is it gets you a manager who can then recommend you for the OWA. And what you're trying to do is, if you get put up for one of those, you go pitch for that. Right? So let's say they're looking for somebody to go write the next Superman movie. And I have a manager and they know I have a strong background in comics, right? In writing for those kind of movies. So my manager's gonna say, hey, Michael, I got you a pitch slot. We're gonna have you go pitch at Warner's to do what is your idea for a Superman movie? And then I'm gonna go in there and pitch. But that doesn't happen without a manager and a strong track record in whatever that genre is. OWAs are super competitive. Because you are competing with like Aaron Sorkin and other like major writers for those open writing slots. If you actually sit down and you were to look at the people who write movies and you would actually take note of the writers, it's not an accident. A lot of them are written by a small group of people. That pool is really small for OWAs. And so to get put, even if you don't get it, to get put up for one, to pitch for one is a huge deal. Huge deal if it happens. Because really, there is no higher echelon. It doesn't get bigger than that. If you're getting put up for an OWA, that means a studio is willing to let you come, and oftentimes those assignments are for big franchise things. They don't just hand the keys to the Corvette over to anybody. So, they're very careful about that. So there are a couple of different ways to pitch, but ultimately, really, you can't do it without a manager or an agent.
Absolutely.
You can't just come in off the street. It doesn't work.